Welcome to another episode of Accounting Flow, another live episode of Accounting Flow. We are diving in today to the future of the accounting profession, what it looks like for firms, for people, for technology, how we're building the future of our industry. I was able, fortunately enough, to attend Intuit Connect, where we got a sneak peek at what some of these things look like and learning about what our vendors are building and how they are architecting the future of our industry. What's really interesting to me about that is that a lot of people are thinking about this very differently, yet they're also building very similar capabilities for us accountants to thrive in this next generation. So today we have Alan Whitman that's supposed to be hopping on today to help coach and guide and provide his thoughts on what the future of the accounting industry looks like. If he hops on, I will bring him in as quickly as possible. But I've got some thoughts and ideas on what this looks like and a bit of a roadmap for how to be thinking about the future of your firm, the future of our industry, and this is also live, and so to the extent possible, let's get some engagement. Let's have a conversation about this. I'm excited about the opportunity to have this conversation. Drop your questions and comments in the chat here on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on X, and let's dive in. So I think a lot of folks in our industry are really kind of uncertain about what AI involvement looks like. It's starting to creep its way in a variety of ways, whether it's supporting blog writing or social content or email writing support, things like that. We've seen it come in more through the lens of how is this helping the text side of our relationships to our work and to our clients. What we're starting to see is some AI improvements to work getting done in terms of building workflows, in terms of reviewing work, things of that nature. Yet we still don't really have a good grasp on where it's going and how to really be prepared for a future where AI is a critical component of our everyday. Now, at Intuit Connect, the CEO Sasan had a keynote, a presentation in which he said, "Can you imagine today somebody taking your phone away from you?" And the broad answer was no. You can't take my phone away. I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't be able to figure out how to get to the coffee shop or get to the information that I need based on what's available today in our pocket, which 10, 15, 20 years ago we thought we'd be fine without smartphones, but today it's such an integral part of our lives. The thought process was that maybe 2 years or 3 years from now, the AI assistant that will be in your pocket every day, supporting your life, supporting your professional work, is going to be indispensable just as much as the smartphone is. And so we need to start thinking about how do we begin to architect an environment to live alongside of an AI assistant that can help us actually get work done. And so when I think about this, you got the platform strategies that are really starting to support broader AI adoption to help you get your work done. And then you also have AI adoption happening off platform on individual usage in ChatGPT. And everybody's using that a little bit differently today. When I think about how we utilize it today, how we're viewing it, I think a big component of this is the data infrastructure of trying to understand how do you create a data layer that AI can layer on top of to create intelligence for your practice and for your clients in a secure manner. That's another equation that most folks aren't thinking about is security. Everything that you put into a large language model today, if you're outside of a team environment or outside of a single snapshot chat, um, it's going to be publicly available for the model to be retrained on. And so we need to be very careful about how these are deployed. If they're outside of systems that are currently managing client work that you have as a protected environment that's really permissioned well. So when I think about that data infrastructure layer, what I think about is data consistency. I think about how are you cleansing data that's coming in from a variety of different sources to the extent possible. If you're capable of aggregating that data in a way that helps you more holistically see what's happening across your firm. Maybe that's financial data for clients. Maybe that's workflow management data for the tasks that your team are taking on. Maybe that's data coming in from your CRM. There's a lot of ways to be able to accomplish that. And so I'm really excited about the future of building a data layer to support AI layering on top of that. There's a lot of nuance to building a data infrastructure. There's a lot of nuance to understanding how that fits into a broader AI strategy. But broadly speaking, having a layer of cleansed data will allow you to more efficiently step into a world of Gen AI. And I believe I've got Alan here in the waiting room, about to be hopping on, waiting for the camera to pop on. But the future of our industry is changing rapidly. It is changing every single day. And so, to the extent possible, we need to be architecting systems and processes today that enable us to scale tomorrow. And there are a variety of ways that your firm will be impacted by that. And so, I like to think about it from the data perspective. What tasks are being accomplished? What are we delivering to clients? What services are we rendering? Do we have a really cohesive roadmap for designing and architecting the services that we provide? Because then there's a ripple effect back to pricing, back to the tasks that your team take on, back to how you organize the information in a system. And so starting with a data warehouse solution, starting with one centralized location, maybe it's Google Sheets, to where you can send that information to, you can integrate these outside platforms into a single source, and then layering data or AI on top of that will allow a little bit better readability from an AI tool to provide it context to serve you more efficiently. Not only that, if you think about a future where an AI agent can actually take action on your behalf, if your workflows and your tasks are oriented in a very consistent manner, the language model, the AI will be able to read into that. It'll be able to understand what systems are attached to specific tasks. It'll be able to understand what dependencies are required to fulfill tasks. And maybe if there's a key person in charge of that, they will be able to bubble up that information for the individual taking on the task. So it could be as simple as reconciliations, a bank rec. Hey, we know that we need the bank statement. AI can go in and understand whether or not we've already collected that via a client request, and or if we're able to fetch that automatically through a different system. A variety of ways that you can think about how to architect that. I mentioned data. I've got a firm belief that data is accounting. Accounting is data. And at the end of the day, we look at accounting through the lens of debits and credits. We look at it through the lens of financial transactions that occur through a bank feed. Yet we kind of omit the broader data component. But in reality, we're all data architects. We're data strategists. We are taking transactional level data, we are reconciling it, cleansing it, categorizing it, and then we're outputting it in the form of a deliverable to our clients. When I think about how we're shifting and how technology is coming in to service clients at the base level, I think that most of our bookkeepers and accountants today, as we think of them, will be shifting into systems administrators, systems overseers in the future. Maybe that's 3 years out, maybe that's 5 years out, but they'll have to get really proficient at managing systems to accomplish what they were accomplishing manually today or maybe a few years ago. So as we shift this perspective from the bookkeeper lens into a more advisory, more systems, more technology driven approach, I think we really need to incorporate data into that strategy. Um, when I think about that holistically, on one hand, as accountants, as CFOs, as bookkeepers, we are naturally inclined to gravitate naturally towards just financial data. Yet, we know that financial data is derived from things that happen through operations, things that happen through sales, things that happen through HR and people. And so if you have this siloed mindset of just taking transactional information that happens and delivering it into a financial report, yet you're omitting all of the activity that's happening outside of the realm of the finance function, you're probably omitting a big part of driving value to that business, of actually being a true advisor. And again, if you think about that shift in mindset from bookkeeping and accounting into being more systems administrators, that also means that we need to up level and upskill our team from an advisory standpoint to serve clients holistically. And you can't really advise really well if you don't have visibility into the other data layers of your clients' businesses. So you need to be thinking about things like, how does the CRM data impact what I'm doing in the advisory function for my client? How does my company's or my clients' operational data impact what we're doing financially? And so, to the extent possible, I believe that data as a service will become a really big part of what we do as accountants. I'm not sure what the government or governance and compliance and regulation side of that will look like. However, I believe that we will be shifting more towards an environment where data will play a big, big part in our day to day. And now I've got the pleasure of seeing Mr. Alan Whitman here in the back room. So I will bring him on board and let him more professionally talk more about the future of our profession here momentarily. I think we've got you on stage now. Good morning.
Well, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, sir. How are you?
I'm well. I apologize for the screen. My iPad and my laptop have decided not to work today. I can't charge either of them, and I didn't realize that last night. So I've got.
We may have lost connection with you there, but I'm glad you're here. We're in the room, and we were starting to lean into the conversation around the future of accounting in our industry on the data side of things. All right, so we're gonna we're gonna keep trucking with this conversation on data as a service, and if Alan's able to figure out the tech side, he'll hop back in, and we've got him now. All right, we've got you back now.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We cannot see you though.
Give it a second. Everything says it's working here, but there we go.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Very nice, Alan. Well, thanks for joining. Great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. And as you may be able to tell, I was sharing this a minute ago. I'm on my iPhone. My iPad and laptop, for whatever reason, have decided to not work. Maybe it's election day. I don't know.
There's probably a lot of conspiracies out there. There's a lot of things happening in our world today. But we're gonna have a good conversation regardless. So glad you're here. I started kicking off the conversation around the future of our industry, the future of accounting and finance, and how AI is playing a part of that, how data is playing a big part of that. I would love to hear your perspective on that first. I worked at a firm in my past in Dallas, Texas, that was ultimately acquired by Baker Tilly, and I believe you may have participated in that acquisition in Plano, Texas. A lot of good friends still work there, and I would love to hear a little bit about you and your background and maybe participation in that if it's relevant.
Well, sure. I mean, I led the acquisition of Montgomery Kasha Grelick. I identified them. It took a little bit of time. MCG was going through a transformation, new leadership, et cetera. We stuck with it, and we were lucky enough to bring them into the Baker Tilly family, and it was a great transaction for both firms, both Baker Tilly and MCG. So don't recall meeting you along the way, but knowing that you were there tells me a lot about who you are. So that's a nice connection.
Yeah, Tom Montgomery was foundational for my career. Just the way in which he views people and relationships. I learned so much from that man, and one of his mantras was "Be significant in the lives of others," and that has stuck with me to today. And he's somebody that I constantly look to as a really good gold standard for professionalism, for leadership in our industry.
Yeah, well, I don't know about, well, I only had the pleasure of meeting him once, went to lunch with him. He had already stepped down and moved aside, um, uh, going to the next part of his career, and MCG kept moving ahead, and Matt Kasha became the leader, and then a couple of others became the leader. So had met Tom just once.
Yeah. Yeah. And you since have transitioned out of the public world and into more of advising, coaching, mentoring, talking a lot about the future of our industry. Tell us a bit about what you're up to today.
Well, look, when I was the CEO of Baker Tilly, we were pushing the boundaries, trying to, or having quite a bit of success in reimagining a firm of scale.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest point here, is that, are the firms of scale, are they able to shift from the long-standing historical practices that has made the profession so great, and at the same time held the profession back from being a little bit more progressive and whatnot. And look, moving a large organization is difficult. Having said that, we made quite a bit of headway in that direction. Look, my background is, I'm a public accounting brat. I started at Price Waterhouse, Coopers and Lybrand, PwC, built an international. Baker Tilly, became the CEO, and we had mass in a very short period of time, 8 years. It was a couple that we were on.
I caught most of that, but the public accounting background is interesting relative to most of the firms that listen to this. Smaller firms typically, and also have public accounting backgrounds, and they broke out to try to build something different. They broke out to try to create a different environment, more opportunity, and more maybe rapid development for their firms based on their experience from working in public. Are you seeing that happening more and more? Are you consulting with a lot of smaller firms? How do you interface with the market today? Well, I think we lost Alan. All right. So we will continue to move forward here. Here he is.
Yeah,
All right,
I
we got him back.
apologize. I'm not certain what's going on today. I just switched to another Wi-Fi channel.
Well, this one's working smooth so far. I was just asking, your background and involvement in public accounting is very similar to most of us that run smaller firms, and we've got an audience of primarily smaller firms here on this channel. How do you interface with the market today? Are you seeing more and more small firms pop up? Yeah, what are you getting involved in today?
Yeah, so I'm doing quite a bit of coaching, CEO coaching, entrepreneur coaching, technology founders and teams. Mostly, the technology is mostly focused on the CPA profession and the accounting industry.
Yeah,
And so I'm having a great time. I'm using my skills and my background. Sorry for the dog. The mail person is delivering the mail, and then we've got a very small dog that thinks he's a little Cujo-y. Anyhow, uh, um, I'm connecting with a number of large firms, all the way up to 500 million, let's say, all the way down to
sure.
a very, very small startup. And look, leadership principles and strategy principles are are common amongst whether you're a small firm or a large firm. It just depends upon how you apply them. And so, I mean, a lot of people talk about large firms and small firms, and they're so different. Well, sure, there are differences, and there are quite a bit of similarities, a large number of similarities. I one of my partner, who I'm working with in building a new style firm, is for that person's from a small firm. I grew up in
Yeah,
a small firm environment, and it's just fantastic at how common or how similar the subjects of our discussions are.
yeah,
Uh, and my experiences enable the experiences of my partner, and my partner's experiences enable mine. So it's frankly it's a wonderful partnership, and
yeah.
we're each better for it.
Yeah, definitely. I've had the pleasure of sitting in a number of rooms on advisory boards and advisory councils with large firm representatives, small firms, everything in between. And you're right. You know, they're the same conversations, the same problems that are being experienced on both sides. I think one of the biggest differences is that we, as a smaller firm of 12 people today, we're able to iterate and pass change through far more quickly, and increase adoption to technology and things like that. That there's just not the same level of input or scrutiny or red tape that exists at larger firms. How have you seen some of the larger firms manage tech adoption really well?
Look, anytime you have a change in a process or a system, it is an influence on mindset and human nature. So sure, the more people that you need to bring into the fold, the more challenging it is. And at the same time, you may not think you've got as much adoption challenge as the large firms, but for the size organization you probably have the same percentage or same influence. It's just it's a small organization, but the same number of
Yeah.
people. If you have four of 12 challenging a change, that's a third of your people. It's easy to go to the four people. You can get it done before lunch. If you have a third at a large firm, it's still a third. And so,
Yeah.
it's all relative. It's interesting. I'm very close with a recently retired Big Four US managing partner, and he led the firm nationally. And we would, I was a billion, the firm I led was a billion, he was 18, 19. And it was, again, the same issues, the same challenges. People are people. Having said that, I agree with you. You can get things done more quickly. You can be more nimble, definitely. I wrote about this in a recent blog. Uh,
Mm.
look, the way you instill progress and adoption of new technologies or new systems is pilot them throughout the organization, get people to buy
Yeah.
in, and then it's citizen led. And that would be whether it's a firm of your size or a firm of Baker Tilly. Regardless, somebody said this to me recently, and I think it's brilliant. Human nature is undefeated. Right?
Yeah.
We're all humans, and
Yeah.
human nature is undefeated. So we're gonna act the way we act, whether you're
Yeah.
in a small firm or a large firm.
Yeah, I agree with that and believe that the future of our industry will continue to be heavily predicated upon humans and relationships and our ability to advise clients really well. How do you see the relationship between us as accountants providing services to clients evolving with the rapid change that we're experiencing in the environment and industry today?
Well, look, we've been changing since I joined the profession in
Sure.
'87, right? Whether it was Lotus, Excel, voicemail, email. I mean, all those things were major changes
Yeah.
back. I remember still getting the pink slips or the yellow slips. Not pink slips, the yellow slips at the desk when I come back from lunch. So, I mean, there have been massive changes along the way. And yes, there are more changes. The speed of development has never been as fast as it is now. Uh, Look, there's a saying out there, gradually then suddenly. Things are happening gradually every day. We just don't know it because we're living it,
Yeah.
right? And so then suddenly you're like, wait, what just happened? I'll give you an example. COVID, as it was a horrible pandemic. It was a horrible time for humankind, right, with death and relationship destruction and what have you. As I look at it, it was like a time machine. You walked into the time machine in March of 2020, and you sometimes walked out. Some people walked out in 21, some people walked out in 22, and all of a sudden, it's the calendar says 21 or 22, but the way that people felt, it was like almost 2035 with work from home and virtual work, et cetera, which is interesting. Uh, but that was already happening. It was happening gradually, but
Yeah.
suddenly something, a catalyst, made it seem like, oh my God, where did this come from? Well, we probably weren't paying attention. So look, I think that technology advancements, I think the way we work, uh, I remember when Friedman put out the book, The World is Flat. We were like, well, what do you mean the world is flat? Well, it was a really good book saying that the economies around the world are flat, and it's not just they and we. It's us. And so I mean that was a book that everybody should have paid attention to. So I think we underestimate what's happening on a daily basis, and we're looking for the big boom, if you will.
Yeah.
Having said that, there's changes abound everywhere, not just technology.
Totally, totally. I mean, just in the relationship to employees in the accounting space, the way in which new entrants into our industry are expecting different things than they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Yes, things are happening gradually, but at the rate at which things are changing today, it feels kind of sudden. It feels like every 3 month, 6 month increment, things are changing materially enough to predicate change in the firm.
Well, remember, 20 years ago, we didn't have social media. So we got our news from a paper.
Yeah,
We got our news from the nightly news. We didn't get our news at our fingertips.
totally.
And so it's thrust in front of us, to us. And so we're watching things evolve and we're talking about it over and over. It's mass exposure. And so, again, I think things were happening. We just didn't know they were happening. It wasn't mass distribution. That's not to say that I disagree with the pace. Of course, things are happening faster now. I just think we need to. I think we need to recognize that things have been going on for quite some time.
Sure. And you can recognize that all day long, but how does that help you make decisions today? Like I'm curious from like a small firm perspective. I've been able to see a lot of changes transpired over the last 15 years of my career in accounting. And to your point, people have an expectation today of access to information that didn't exist 20 years ago. And that has been very gradual. But being equipped with that information doesn't necessarily equip me to be able to make really intelligent decisions that I need to make today in order to be prepared for tomorrow. Does that make sense?
So what do you, so okay, so I'll ask you, so what do you need in addition to the information to make decisions to be better equipped?
I need a crystal ball. I need to try to take signals that are happening in the market today to understand where is the industry going in order to architect a service that will last for a long period of time, that will create value for the team, for the firm. And I think firm owners are grappling with this question of where do I start leaning into in order to create a sustainable firm?
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, if you had a crystal ball, you'd be perfect, and you'd never an ill-advised decision, and that just doesn't exist. And when somebody does see the future, that doesn't mean they see the future for everything, right?
Yeah.
So look, I think taking on information, I'm a big believer in talking with others in the profession. Look, the CPAs are a profession. The accounting is an industry. So,
Mm.
professions are very focused. The professions, and there's been books written about the professions, are very human centric, no question about it. And now we've got the advent of technology and different types of platforms that are going to hopefully enable the human to achieve more. And so, to me, yes, information is critical, and experience, being able to connect the dots, seeing relationships among data points, talking with others. I'm a big believer that you can learn from people outside of your sector, whether it's
Oh yeah.
the accounting industry, the professional services industry, or the CPA profession. I'm a big believer in reading that which has been written by others to draw a parallel and a connection in order to pave the way for what you're headed to do.
Totally agree with that. We get a lot of influence from the venture capital community, from the startup community, like the pace at which they move, how they're reaching new target audiences, how they're messaging. Those things are big influences on us as a firm, and a lot of inspiration comes from that. And to your point on collaboration, I feel like over the last 5 years, you've seen a lot more of that co-opetition, where people are working together cooperatively while also recognizing that there is some degree of competition, but approaching it through the mindset of like, we're all kind of doing the same things, and this like proprietary process that I had isn't that proprietary anymore. So I'm seeing a lot more of that back and forth and knowledge sharing amongst firm owners. Have you seen that as well from your side?
Oh, that's always been the case in the CPA profession. The major firms group, which is the top 100 firms in the country, from number five, the big four don't participate because they're in a total league. But
Right.
but number five, RSM, down to the 100th firm, get together twice a year, and it was amazing how they worked together.
Mm,
Everybody, all the leaders, the senior leaders, were interested in promoting the profession where
yeah.
rising tides rises all boats. Look, the individual partners or directors or managers are going to compete for new business, and they should.
Yeah.
That's what they're there to do: serve clients and build businesses. But the leaders are very, very collaborative, and
Mm.
that's been going on for a couple decades now.
Sure, sure. I see it more intentionally at the smaller firm level. Like obviously, not many of the people that are listening to this channel like are participating in those larger firm scale conversations and knowledge sharing. But even just at conferences, you see this willingness to dive two notches deeper than maybe they did in the past. And I
Sure.
think it's such a good thing. It's so cool to see, and I think it is really actually advancing the industry. What advice would you give to small firm owners beyond like the leaning into your industry, leaning into your peers? How would you think about kind of coaching at a high level, how a firm owner should be thinking about evaluating their next steps to build something that's long lasting?
Well, look, I write often about all roads lead to and from strategy.
Hmm.
I think the most important thing that anybody can do is design a strategy, not a plan, but a strategy, a mission, a vision, a purpose. Where are you going to play? Not how are you going to play there, but where are you going to play?
Yeah.
What is your niche in the market? And once from that hangs off all the pieces that enable that. I think that the smaller firm leaders can learn a lot from those of us that have led larger firms. We've just seen more.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we're exactly correct or that we we have every answer, and we've got a lot of experience and a lot of reps in
Yeah.
things that the smaller firm leaders can take on,
Yeah.
digest, iterate, and then design for themselves.
Yeah.
So I do see smaller firms making the mistake of trying to be all things to all people and just accumulate revenue. And I appreciate revenue is critical, pays the bills, and it keeps you moving and makes you sustainable. However, my fear is that you wake up one day and you don't really know what you are.
Yeah.
You're everything to everybody and you're nothing to everybody as well. And so
Yeah.
strategy, taking the time to slow down to speed up, strategy is so critical. I
Hmm.
saw it at a large firm when it was made up of a number of firms, like you mentioned, MCG and others. We did 20, I don't know, 22 acquisitions, mergers during my tenure as CEO, and all of them uh, became enablers of the corporate strategy, the firm strategy, and it accelerated their performance. So
Yeah.
I think learning from those that have come before you and in a larger set. Look, I learned a ton from the national managing partner of one of the big four. Same
Sure.
issues, but look, it just gave me a leg up on those that didn't speak with that person.
Yeah.
And so, I've enjoyed talking with the leaders of the $2 million firm or the $1 million firm or the $750,000 startup to help them think differently, help them
Yeah.
think in alternative ways than what comes naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you led with the strategy, particularly the mission, vision, values, purpose, focus. There is a cascading impact to the client service, to your team, how you architect systems. One of the things, kind of moving forward with that thought is that, you mentioned, hey, like we can learn a lot from the big firms. And I feel, and this is more anecdotal, but I feel like there's some degree of resistance of going to larger firm leaders of oftentimes the environments that you came from because you're like, I don't want to do that. I want to be different than that. And so, it feels like there might be some resistance to go to larger firms or people that operate in larger firms because there's seeming like this group think. environment that's happening that may not be as connected. Whereas if you're a 20-person firm, maybe going to like a 50-person firm or a 100-person firm of like that next notch up instead of 6 notches up, maybe a little bit more directly applicable. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you certainly have to choose the right person.
True.
And yes, a 50-person firm is different than a 12-person firm.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, it's not that much different because they're still trying to figure out the same stuff to a certain
Yeah.
degree than a 12-person firm. Using your example, look, you don't need to take all advice on one. Two, you got to be really crisp in what you're hoping to accomplish from the connections. Um, I don't tell I don't tell the CEOs. I tell the CEOs what didn't work, what
Sure.
I didn't see
Yeah.
work as it relates to people. Like for instance, I just had a conversation with a CEO of a $200 million firm, and so we were 7 times larger than they are,
Hmm.
7 times, and what I was delivering made a ton of sense in this 1/7 size firm. So look, I'm not so sure size is important. Uh, I think that the quality of the counseling and the coaching is what's important, and the relationship that you have. And
Yeah.
if you're careful, you'll filter things that are coming to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
frankly, for instance, don't talk about timesheets, because I know that the smaller firms don't want timesheets, so just don't talk about it, right? Although I talk about timesheets all the time because I'm a big believer in value versus production, and so I endorse that. So I think those that are hesitant may be missing out on a really really rich opportunity.
Yeah. And it's all about balancing perspective, right? Everybody has their own journey, their own seat that they sit in. And you've got some really forward thinking folks at big firms, at smaller firms, everywhere in between. And to your point, it's like identify the right person, identify the right mantra that person is beating over and over again that resonates with you. Like those people will be invaluable to your journey moving forward.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know we had a 30-minute discussion slotted here, and I'm already at the 37-minute mark, and I wish we could carry this conversation forward. There's a lot to dive into here, so maybe we'll have to do a part two on this because we really didn't get into like the nuts and bolts of the future of the industry and where your thoughts are there. If you had some like closing thoughts around the future of this industry, wh- where do you think we're going?
Well, I don't think the CPA profession is is at risk. I think it's very vibrant. I think that it is a necessary part of the markets. I think that it needs to change, like every organization needs to
Yeah,
change. The profession needs to change. And I think the firms need to be the one to be the catalyst for that change. It can't be the
mm,
AICPA, it can't be, state societies. They certainly can enable, but the firms themselves need to evolve to a more futuristic model than holding on to the past. Look, technology is the great enabler and equalizer, because
sure.
when everybody has it, everybody's got the table stakes. And I do think it's an enabler. I do think that it is a positive force on the profession, on the delivery of value added advisory observations and recommendations, and I think that firms should embrace it. I worry that technology is solely being used or predominantly being used to do the transactional work,
Mm,
and it's not being used to enable the value added part of the of the profession. It's interesting. Everybody complains about the the bookkeeping and the repetitive tasks of closing books and accounting. I agree with that. So we've gotten technology to do it. Okay, so what? We're not done. That's the point. We've gotten it out of the
mm,
human piece, or the human intervention piece of the equation. But if that's all we do, and there's a lot of technology companies out there that are building great technologies, great solutions, no question about it. And so they're taking care of the the X's and O's that people don't want to do. So that's great for people. But if we don't reimagine how firms operate, knowing now that they have that, what have we done? Okay, we've used technology to take care of the simple stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, should we claim victory at that point? I don't think so. So it's both an enable. It should be an enabler. I'm not seeing it as much as I would like, and of course it is an equalizer.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that technology is an equalizer. Um, yeah. To your point, I think to the extent that we're using technology to create internal efficiency, that's one thing. But if you're not utilizing it to create a better outcome for the people that you're working for and working with, you're not really gaining a whole lot and adding to the profession. So, yeah, interesting thoughts there. Thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're gonna cut off here shortly, and I'm glad we finally got some tech figured out and got you on the horn here. Appreciate you spending some time here. If folks want to learn more about what you're doing in the market, your coaching, where can folks find you?
Yeah, my website is alandwhitman.com, ALAND as in David Whitman, WHITMAN.com. And my email, if you want to just send me a note, is Alan, ALAN, at alandwhitman.com.
Cool.
So thank you for that.
Very good. Well, reach out to Alan if you want to start a conversation, learn more about his thoughts on the future of the industry. Appreciative of you joining us today, and we'll have more conversation on this in the future, I'm sure of it.